All right, are we there?
Okay,
hello.
Go ahead now, Brad. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So we're picking up with Cain and Abel. Obviously, I think everybody in there is very familiar with what happened. We're not going to go into great, humongous detail, but I do want to point out a few things. Where do we turn in the Bible to find out about who did right and who did not do right?
Hebrews 11.
Hebrews 11. In fact, if you look at Hebrews 11, verse 4, by faith Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it he being dead still speaks. So lots of good meat in that particular verse. I love the fact that he's still speaking even though he's dead, meaning, you know, even after we're gone, our good works can continue on. We know obviously that there was jealousy involved. Somebody tell me of another incident very early on before Noah where we've got a murder involved and blood is hitting the ground. What's somebody else's name that does that?
You said before who?
Before Noah, there's another murderous situation like this.
Lamech?
There you go. This same chapter, if you look at verse 23, the Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, listen to my speech, for I've killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. So, obviously, very early in mankind's history, we got a problem, and that part of the problem is we aren't able to control ourselves. We're doing what we want to do, jealousy, pride of life, etc. And so that falls into the picture very quickly. I want you to put an asterisk beside verse 7 of chapter 4. I'm going to back up and start in verse 6. Listen very carefully. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your countenance fallen? So he is, again, remember we're basically in the patriarchal age where God is able to talk to people directly. He's talking to Cain. He says, what's wrong with you? Notice verse 7. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at your door, and its desires for you, but you should rule over it. What's God telling him?
You'll have a choice.
You've got free moral agency right here, brother.
That's right.
You've got free moral agency to do what's right, but sin is sitting at your door. There are a lot of people in our congregations who need to hear this message. The fact that they have a choice every single day when they wake up. They can do right or they can do wrong. When they turn on a television and watch television, they can watch good shows or they can watch unwholesome shows. Same thing with the internet. Same thing with their business dealings. Sin is at their door, but they can do right. And they know what they need to do. Now Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in a field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and he killed him. The Lord said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? Again, God here, he's asking a question that he already knows the response to, but he wants to prick the heart of his creation. Cain said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? God said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. You'll till the ground. It shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you'll be on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive, a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me is going to kill me. The Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken upon him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Why did God need to put this mark on Cain?
Because someone probably wanted revenge, being his brothers or sisters perhaps want to get back at him for killing his brother.
Bingo. All right, let's just go ahead and you guys know me hopefully well enough by now. Y'all know I'm a land the plane kind of guy. Let's ask the question. Is the mark of Cain turning somebody black?
Yes.
Wow, I got yeses, nos, and
We don't know.
Never heard that before.
the answer is no. You guys will get a full discourse on Thursday on the origin of human races, why we've got all the different colors around us, how we could have all come from Adam and Eve. But I need you to understand God created one race, the human race. And while we don't know what this particular mark is, I think it's very safe to say he didn't make this guy white or black. A lot of people, especially in the South, are prejudiced to that, and because of the negative connotations, that's what they would assume. The reality of it is, in that part of the world, more than likely, folks were already a kind of a mocha color, and that wouldn't have been that big a deal. So when I think of the mark of Cain, I think Gorbachev.
Yeah.
Port wine stain, very easily recognizable.
Brad, wouldn't that, since it was patriarchal, hadn't the patriarch, there probably had been some sort of law set down that if you do this, then you'll have some sort of mark? Wasn't there maybe something within the family that was already established?
I'm using black.
Well, obviously, if he says, look, you're going to be avenged sevenfold, God's laying down a pretty serious punishment. Anybody messes with this guy. Now, here's the other thing that you got to remember, and this is why, this goes back to my original question. Why would God even mark Cain in the first place? Guys, if you're living to be 900 years old, do you think that there's going to be generations that come after you that hear the account of Cain killing Abel, messing everything up, and maybe even 2 or 3 generations later, I mean, you're living to be 800, 900, you got these young teenagers growing up who are thinking, hey, man, we'll just go take him out. So God marked him in a way in which, for the entirety of his life, they would know who he was. Let's look at the very next verse, because that's where the questions start coming. Verse 16, Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Where in the world did Cain get his wife, and what about this land of Nod? It kind of sounds like this is already an established place, doesn't it? Who's doing the writing right here? Moses. Okay, is it possible that Moses, in his infinite wisdom, knew of this place called Nod that wasn't already named when Cain went there?
That's a possibility, yeah.
And by that I mean this. Let's say that you own a field, and they decide that they're going to make it a mall. And they call the mall the Crown Mall. Well, if you own that field for 20 years, and they turn it into a mall, and they call it the Crown Mall, and you grow old, and you've got grandkids sitting on your lap, and you look at your grandkids, and you say, yep, I used to run through right where the Crown Mall is. Now, did you run through the Crown Mall? No, you ran through the fields, but now your grandkids know it as the Crown Mall. So looking back in history, is it acceptable for him to say, hey, he went through this land of Nod? Well, yeah, because that's where land of Nod would become. Somebody had a question in the back.
Yeah, I have a question, and this probably doesn't mean anything, but it's bothering.
Okay.
Verse 23 in chapter 3, he talks about Eden. Then 24, east of Eden. Then we get over here, Nod, east of Eden. What is this? Is this a significant place? What is it?
Okay, remember on the first day we were together, I told you to kind of make yourself familiar with the Fertile Crescent.
Right.
Fertile Crescent part of that area. Because with that in mind, you can kind of continually look at a map and say, okay, apparently all the important stuff right now, all the way up through Genesis chapter 4 and 5, a lot of this stuff is happening on this east side of this Fertile Crescent area. Here you got the Tigris, Euphrates. You can at least, while you can't put a pin in a place and say there's where the Garden of Eden was, you can at least kind of get some generalities and know that's where things are taking place.
Okay. I just didn't understand why he sent them out. Okay, gotcha.
The other thing that you might, and a couple of scholars have pointed this out, because of the context and the way it's written, it appears that there would be some type of wall around this garden. Now, whether that's a wall of bushes, a physical wall, a wall of rock, I don't know. I can't tell you that. But it appears to be that there would only be so many ways in and so many ways out, and that God protected so that they couldn't just easily get back in there to where things were nice and easy. Other thoughts, comments?
Are we still going to get under where his wife came from?
Yes, that's where we are right now. Where'd Cain's wife come from? Go back to Genesis 3:20. Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. Mm-hmm. That only gives us two options. Option number one is sister. Option number two, we know according to Genesis 5, verse 4, Adam and Eve had other children after Seth. The text says specifically, he begot Seth, the days of Adam were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters, plural, both. So is it possible that Cain married his sister, or that Cain waited until his younger brothers and sisters grew of age, got married, and then had offspring and married his niece? Yeah. Either one of those is possible. What is not possible is for you to say, oh, there's all these groups of people that God just placed all over the planet. Cain wandered into one of them, found a wife, and married him, lived happily ever after. Because according to the text, Eve was the mother of all living. Why would that not be a big deal for Cain to marry his sister back then?
Genetic purity.
Told to multiply.
They were genetic, pure. I mean, no mutations. Why can you not marry your sister or your first cousin today?
Nasty. It's just nasty. What are you talking about?
Somebody says, have you seen my sister?
Because you get a concentration of bad genes. For example,
Bingo.
if I have a bad gene and my sister has a high likelihood of having, or a 50% chance of having the same gene, something like that.
That's right.
If you have kids, then the kids could have an extremely high chance of showing
That's right.
bad gene. Yeah.
It multiplies the mutation rate twofold. Because suddenly the bad recessive genes are going to be expressed in that next generation. Now, that's not very popular in the state of Alabama, but it's true. Somebody else had a comment or a question. I thought I saw a hand.
So couldn't evolution speed up the process of evolution by increasing mutations?
Yeah, there you go. All we need to do is start marrying in between our family members, and we can speed evolution. Now, realize, folks, at this point, God has called everything very good. There are not the mutations. And as somebody pointed out, I think Chris or somebody pointed out, one of the first commandments was be fruitful and multiply. Part of their job was to plentify the earth. And so here they are. We find them doing this. Cain knew his wife. She conceived. She bore Enoch. Built a city. Called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad. So then we start going through the family of Cain. What religion claims to have come through Cain?
Islam.
Yeah. And that's an interesting little piece of trivia you might tuck away. Guys, when you're talking to somebody who is buying into the Islam religion, they trace their lineage through Cain, which in and of itself right there, I got some issues with that. But when you look at the rest of the chronology through the Bible, when you look at the lineage, we come through Seth, not Cain. Okay, we've already touched. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought the Muslims claimed to come through Ishmael. I thought that was who they claimed as their kind of patriarch.
It won't be Cain, will it? Because he would have been killed by the flood, or his line would have been destroyed in the flood.
I thought it was lies.
They claim both. I mean, when you pin them down, if you go online and you type in Muslim Cain, you're going to see articles where they're talking about their lineage coming through Cain. But yeah, you're right on the Ishmael thing as well, because ultimately Abraham is told, hey, you're going to be the father of many nations. He doesn't believe that he's going to have a child in his old age. Sarah laughs at God. She's old. She says, go have relations with my handmaid Hagar. They have a child, Ishmael, the first child, even though that is not the leader of the Jewish nation. That's not the leader or the child who would then become multiple seeds throughout all time. Obviously, that's Isaac. So, when you look through their history, they're tracing it back to two people ultimately. One would be Ishmael, who they say is the first one, the rightful heir from Abraham, but they also trace their lineage back to Cain.
Okay.
Good point.
How did they intend to do that when everything got narrowed down to basically Noah and his sons?
The same way that the Jews today would say that they know they are from the tribe of X, Y, or Z, even though the reality of it is they don't have a clue. They basically are making some pretty good speculation. How would you know, for instance, that how would you know that Osama bin Laden is from the lineage of Ishmael?
Terrorist?
Do what? He's a terrorist. Nice. The reality of it is, guys, we don't have the luxury of having those particular family lineages. I mean, that would be, talk about being nice. Think about being able to go from Adam literally to us today. And by that I mean we can go from Adam to Christ without any problem. But think about being able to pick up with the generation of Christ and coming forward and finding your name on a family tree that has the lineage all the way from Adam to here. That'd be great. But the reality of it is we don't know. Lots and lots of stuff happened during periods like the Dark Ages, the Silent Years, where the Mormons weren't around to have a nice family lineage website that we could go to and plug in our name. So, all right, picking up. Verse 25 of chapter 4, Adam knew his wife again. She bore a son, named him Seth, for God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. As for Seth, to him also a son was born. He named him Enosh. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. Notice, that's when people, according to the text, started calling on the name of the Lord. So we are roughly 2 generations in before people started what I would call more of a formal worship kind of deal where they realize, hey, I need God. Chapter 5. Chapter 5, what I'd like for y'all to do is just go ahead and memorize it word for word for the test. Just kidding. Just kidding. Chapter 5 being the family of Adam. I do, in a very serious notion, I do want you guys to look through that. I want to read it. I'm not going to test you over every single lineage there. But I do want you to get a strong feel for how long people were living, how long they waited until they had children and offspring, how many offspring people were having, because that, to me, that really starts setting the stage for the whole patriarchal era, and it gets us back to that timeline. Questions through the end of Genesis chapter 5.
Question from us?
Yeah, do you guys have any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
The end of verse 4, it says, people began to call on the name of the Lord. Now is that,
Verse 26?
yes.
Okay.
So, if I'm correct, that would be the Lord like in all caps, is that right?
Yes.
So that's the name of Jehovah, but in Exodus chapter 3, God told Moses that was his covenant name, and by Abraham, he was not known by that name.
Okay.
So how can they be calling on the name of the Lord if the Lord didn't give them that name, that Jehovah or Yahweh or whatever you call it until Exodus 3.
Patriarchal.
There was a difference in dealing directly and talking directly. And it says they began to call on the name of the Lord. Doesn't say they called the name of the Lord. Called on the name of the Lord. That's two different scenarios. It'd be one thing for me to say, God help me out here, and name him specifically, versus, please help me. In one, I'm calling on the name of the Lord directly. The other, I'm calling on him. Does that make sense? Yeah, Chris?
Maybe the same situation in verse 16 where Moses may have known the land of Nod as it is at his period of time. They might not have known it during Cain's time that it was going to be called Nod.
Right. Exactly. Well, and that's one of the skeptics' arguments against Moses being the writer of the Pentateuch, because there are several different wordings for God just in the book of Genesis. If you look throughout the book of Genesis, he goes by 2 or 3 different names, and so their point, they're trying to say, hey, wait, look, if Moses, a single author, wrote the Pentateuch, we would expect there to be just a single Yahweh or Jehovah, single rendering of the name God. Number one, we got to remember this is inspired. Number two, Moses is looking back, roughly in round numbers, 2,000, 2,500 years. Other thoughts, comments, questions? Yeah.
Right there. Even so, Moses was a very learned person from the Egyptian kingdom, as well as going out and finding his wife and everything. He knows so much from all these tribes that he's dealt with that he probably could say these are different names for God to interact with these people.
Yeah, I don't have any problem at all mentally accepting the fact that Moses is going to use a variety. It could be his own personal knowledge, or it could simply be, I've never been inspired. I know that may surprise some of y'all that have read some of the stuff I've written. I know that. But just kidding. Just kidding.
Nothing in this.
So you guys are lucky that I can't hear all the comments in the back of the room.
Keep it low.
That's all right. I'm going to instruct Wayne just to have a little digital recorder and just,
I'm taking notes.
There we go. Very good, Wayne. Sweet. All right. Let's pick up with chapter 6, unless you guys have got any more. Go ahead.
I have one more comment for you. We were talking earlier, and we've sort of got back to it about Moses writing it, and how he died, recorded his own death in the book. It's interesting that Jeremiah had almost the same situation where he dies with his book, but we assume he gives information to his scribe who helped him write the book in the first place,
right,
so that he could record the dealings of the other kings in Judah and basically the destruction of Judah.
Yes.
So we can also take that into account that maybe Moses didn't finish the book off, but gave directions to finishing off the book to another writer. So.
Well, a modern day example, Jared, would be what just happened with Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy knew he was going to die, and he basically did two things. Number one, he orchestrated his own funeral. But number two, he had his memoir ready to be released, both from a television media standpoint and a written media standpoint, for the week or so after his death. So he kind of orchestrated what he wanted to get out there. Even though he's dead and in the grave, the media is now unfolding all of this stuff that he prepared prior to his death. Very, very similar kind of situation. Good point. Genesis 6, we start the wickedness and judgment of man. Now again, I want to point out, so you guys aren't missing this, we've gone now from the end of Genesis 2 to Genesis 6 represents roughly, round numbers, 1,500 years. That's a long period of time where not a whole lot is said. We do have one or two things that are worth pointing out. For instance, who never tasted death?
Enoch.
Enoch. What happened to him? Verse 24, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. So, you've got, in this lineage, you've got all these people who are living to be 930, 969. Suddenly, this guy gets to be in the prime of his life. He's 365 years old. And God takes him up. Starting in verse 1, now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. They took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. The Lord God said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. What all do we know from those first 3 verses? And what is it talking about specifically? Uses the phrase, the daughters were born to them, the sons of God and daughters of men. Who are we talking about?
Angels and mankind.
Okay. All right. Let's just open this can of worms all the way up. I'm going to present to you 2 views, okay? 2 views for this particular passage. I'll let you think about both of them, and then I'm going to kind of reveal my hand at the end. I'm going to go ahead and read. I'm going to read through verse 5. There were giants on the earth, or Nephilim on the earth in those days. Also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. And the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent on the thoughts of his heart was on evil continually. There are 2 main theories of what we're talking about here. One of those is you have 2 segments of people. You have the offspring of Seth, and they are starting to have relations with the offspring of Cain. And that's probably, I would say, with a lot of people, that is the majority of what folks think. That basically you have a righteous people and you have an unrighteous people. And that these 2 people are mixing, and all of a sudden everything is horrible. The other is that this is talking about angels and mankind. In order for it to be angels, though, we are talking about fallen angels, correct? I mean, it's talking about these sons of God, using the same word that we would use as angels. We've already looked at 3 passages that pretty much convincingly tell us there was this group of people who were kicked out for rebellion, for pride. They're kicked down to the earth. What is the only possible way that an angel could reproduce with man?
They were human.
Through another human being. Do we have biblical example of what we would call demons possessing human bodies?
Yes.
Old and New Testament. In fact, when Jesus went to a man, he saw him, the man opened his mouth, and out came the words, I am Legion. What's going on in that scene?
He's possessed by multiple demons, devil.
Right. Okay, so I know this is one of those things that's kind of hard to wrap your hands around because we don't see this happening every single day at Walmart. Demons were real. Demons possessed people. Why would I, Brad Harrub, have a problem with somebody saying that these were just angels? What does the Bible specifically say in regards to mankind, angels, and marriage?
Matthew 22, verses 29 and 30. Jesus answered and said to you're mistaken, not understanding the scriptures or the power of God, for in the resurrection, and never more given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven. And that's the only thing it says in heaven there. It sort of puts a bit of a clause in. So whether when they possess someone,
Well, what are they like in heaven?
yeah, in heaven they're not married.
So in heaven, it sounds like things are going to be a little bit more what we might term gender neutral. Meaning, we're not going to be male, female, we're not going to be concerned with that particular aspect of our life. We're not going to be, now, you know, I got a long list of questions that I'm going to ask Christ. And part of what Jared just read is in those list of questions. Exactly what did you mean? We're going to be like the angels who aren't given to marriage. But I do know this. I know enough from the text to know, according to Christ, angels aren't given to marriage. Apparently they are neutral when it comes to being male or female. They don't mate, so to speak, like we do. If that's the case, and I believe firmly it is, that means if we take the angel hypothesis, they would have to possess the bodies of other humans as demons and then reproduce in that form. I'm going to go ahead and throw my cards on the table. For a long time, I believed that this particular passage was talking about two groups of people, good people and bad people, righteous people, unrighteous people. I don't believe that anymore. I actually believe that this is talking about the demonic possession of these angels, these fallen angels. And I think that part of the reason why God had to do such a devastating flood to wipe out both man and animals is because of this demon possession. The fact that you've got a creation that was just perverted and just horrible, and so he cleaned it out. Thoughts, comments, questions?
Wasn't that when the demons leading, they didn't want to, the pigs, so they did not want to go to the pit? That maybe at this time, that when, at the time of the flood, when mankind was destroyed, these demons were actually sent to the pit? Or,
yes.
Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I'm following you completely.
Well, he's talking about, what's that name? Water. Yeah. I'm not sure I get the point across. Okay, now these fallen angels are in this pit in chains, right?
Okay.
Okay. When did this happen? Did all this happen? Did it keep happening, or because didn't the demon ask Jesus not to send him to the pit, but send him into the swine?
Yes.
So
yes.
Wasn't God sending? Could have been sending these fallen angels to the pit because they were on the earth, right? They'd fallen to the earth, and now they're being sent.
Yes.
To the pit.
Yes. I guess what I'm, and I may not be making this clear for you. There were a host of Satan's followers, fallen angels, on this earth prior to the flood.
Right.
And I think the text here is indicating that at some point some of them possessed individuals and they started reproducing. And, from that stage on, the Lord realized, okay, things are quickly deteriorating out of hand. He killed them. He flooded the earth, killed man and beast. Now, do we have demons coming into the picture in the New Testament? Yes, we do. But I think the vast majority of Satan's followers that we read about being kicked out of heaven, I don't think they're around anymore. I think literally God was able to use the flood to destroy a lot of that evil. Now, where they are right this second, I don't know. I don't know if they're in a pit, if they're bound by chains, if they're in a place that we would call Hades or hell, or where they are. But I will say this. I know they're not here. Comment, question?
So the people that would say that would go with the idea that it's two groups of people, what do they do with verse 4 in the Nephilim? Do they say it's just an incidental kind of historical reference that's been...
They actually would render that the giants, not the fallen ones. The truer translation is the fallen ones. Depending on what version of the Bible you guys are holding, like the New King James says very plainly, there were giants on the earth, but it's got a footnote that points out this is talking about the Nephilim, the fallen or the mighty ones. So if you don't read the footnote, or if you don't know what it's talking about here, if you don't go back to the original text, then you're going to just read that as there were giants or large people on the earth in those days.
The giants, they were the fallen angels? You think that's who it's speaking of?
Look at it in context. Replace the word giants with the word Nephilim. There were Nephilim on the earth in those days, and translate Nephilim to the fallen ones or the mighty ones. There were the fallen ones on the earth those days. Comments, thoughts? I know this is a lot to wrap your hands around, and again, I know that this is not necessarily the easiest rendering, but I've studied this a long time, guys, and I've studied the wisdom of a lot of smart people. And even though it's hard for me as a human, as a mortal, to get my hands around, I think the most honest rendering of the text is when it says sons of God, it is talking about angels and not talking about good people and bad people. Okay, somebody about two behind Jared has a question.
I think that the other fallen angels were followers of Satan and not just doing whatever they felt like they wanted to do.
From the text that I think we already looked at, because it talks about him being his followers. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick.
I didn't remember that one.
Do what?
I didn't remember that one, sorry.
That's okay. Let me pull my computer where I can get to it. Somebody else had another question while I'm pulling this up.
I was just wondering about, I know that in Matthew it talks about demon possession, but obviously there was a lot of supernatural things happening at that point. Matthew's emphasis is on the miracles. Are there other cases of demon possession in the Old Testament after the flood?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is that just, maybe it happened again, like more fallen angels, or is it different?
Now, at this point, I would say we are definitely on the limb of speculation. Just because, in all reality, we don't know. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. But do we have any record of it happening outside of those verses I gave you guys? No. Other thoughts or comments?
Numbers 13:33 says the sons of Anak are part of the Nephilim. Are those related?
Numbers what?
13:33, when the spies were sent in to spy out the land.
It's the same exact word, yes. Yeah.
What was that?
Numbers 13:33.
You had mentioned the something of God. What did you say that refers to?
Angels. So the reason, okay, look, everybody turn in your Bible to Job chapter 38.
Say that again?
Job chapter 38. God here is speaking. Look at verse 7. When the morning stars sang together and all of the sons of God shouted for joy. The word sons of God is the same exact word that's then used in Genesis 6 for sons of God. And that word is translated as angels. Or heavenly beings, or however you want to call it. But that's, it's the same rendering. And so for me to say, hey, in Job 38 it's talking about the angels singing for joy, and then come back to Genesis 7 and say, oh, well, here it means the righteous people. I think at that point what I'm doing is trying to use mental gymnastics in order to make it more appealing to me as a mortal man who doesn't understand angels and demons.
So that Numbers 13:33 passage has the same exact word, Nephilim. So
right.
Does that mean that this happened again after the flood? God wiped them all out, but they came back and did it again? Because the spies saw those people there in Canaan, didn't they?
Yeah. We're going to touch a little bit on that next Tuesday when we start talking more specifically about Ham and his lineage. Is it possible that something got on the boat?
That's it. That's what I've been in the animals.
So think about that. If you'll bear with me, I want to kind of shelve that thought for just about a week, and we'll come back to it.
Well,
other thoughts, comments?
I'm sorry. Never mind.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good. Oh, I studied with Denny in his class in which you took that verse out of Job. He took me to Colossians 1:16, if that has anything to do with it.
Okay.
For by him all things were created, both in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or dominion, rulers, authorities, all things have been created through him and for him.
Yes.
I don't know how much that plays into what we're talking about, but it makes sense to me.
You mean the fact that God created angels?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before and how they got mixed up and fallen and stuff.
Well, when you combine a passage like Colossians chapter 1, verse 16, Exodus 20, verse 11, you start seeing, yes, angels are not eternal. What's the only eternal being?
God.
God. Okay. God's the only eternal being. Angels had to therefore be created. 1 Colossians chapter 1, verse 16, for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in the earth. Exodus 20, verse 11 then puts a timeline on it. For in 6 days the Lord created the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is. So now we're putting a limit on when the angels came into the picture. Job 38:7 says they were there when God laid the foundation of the earth. They shouted for joy. That's limiting us to day one. All of a sudden we see that same word, sons of God, in Genesis 6, verse 2, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose.
So which verse was it again where they said they were followers of Satan?
Let me see.
So you're saying that we get word from the bad.
Let me look at Job for just a second. Go back to Job. Job chapter 1, you guys there? Job chapter 1, you got a pretty good dialogue between God and Satan, where he is taking more of a, what we would call, I'm still looking for the specific verse that I want, because there's a passage where it basically points to him as a leader of a band or a. I will find it for you.
Verse 6.
In fact, I'll. What is it?
6.
Why did you say 6?
Yeah, I mean that's in there, but that's not the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for a better one. There's another passage that. I'll be looking for it while we are continuing on. Genesis 6. Back to it. Let's look at the passage, verse 5. And the Lord saw that wickedness was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was on evil continually. I would contend that, guys, the only possible way our hearts could be on evil continually is if there was some type of demonic possession. And I think that's what he's getting at here was, look, these folks, they had literally given themselves over to. Now, the question then pops up, were they completely innocent and these demons took them over? Or was there some kind of a give and take?
Well, could we say that since Satan could take over the snake and talk to Eve, that these other demons could take over other animals, talk to humans, convince them to let them come in willingly?
Exactly. Say that again so I can hear you.
Alright, sorry, I was talking fast. Would it be possible that since Satan could take over the snake and talk to Eve, that other demons could take over animals and talk to humans, convincing them to let them indwell their bodies? Thus, the human would be implicated directly in the evil that the demon did.
Yep. And I think there's a lot to be said on that as far as, I don't think, how do we know that, for instance, Satan can't just enter me right this second? What do we know in the New Testament that talks about, what do we have the ability to do?
Allow him in.
Resisting.
Okay?
Judas.
We can resist, right? We can resist the devil. If we can resist the devil, then so could the people living back then, which tells me they had to let their guard down. They had to basically take that resistance away.
Jude 6 talks about, and the passages following talks about the battle between Michael the Archangel and Satan over Moses' body, and instead of Michael using any of his own power, he just says, the Lord rebuke you. So we sort of have that same ability today where and you see it with many of the disciples on the Olympic Commission, where they would pray or they would call those demons out of the people through the Lord, in the Lord's name.
Jared, I didn't catch the last part of what you just said.
They could command demons out in the Lord's name.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay. Verse 6, the Lord was sorry that he made man on earth. He was grieved in his heart. Somebody tell me what you think is actually happening right there. God is all-knowing. Correct?
Correct.
So, why didn't he just say, duh, knew this was going to happen? Why do you think he was grieved in his heart?
Was he just expressing that to the people themselves so they would know?
Okay. I think that's part of it.
Even though he knew he's still a loving God.
Keep going. You're right.
And will have compassion towards us, or on us.
Okay.
It grieved him. It hurt him, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Pointing to Christ and of salvation.
Is it possible that God is there thinking, I gave these people free will. I really had hoped things would have gone better?
No. He did everything.
God can't hope because he already knows.
Right, okay. Because that would be destination. Good. Okay. Just making sure y'all are thinking. Let's go back to this 120-year deal. Verse 3, the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for indeed he is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. I have probably had at least 100 people come to me with the wrong interpretation that is God putting a limit on the lifespan of man. Why is that wrong?
Because Moses lived longer than that?
Bang, there you go. There you go. Because after he makes this point, we've got people still living over 120 years, so it cannot be God saying, okay, I'm now going to limit your lifespan to 120 years. Because if that's the case, there would be nobody past him at 100. Even the Guinness Book of Records records somebody 122. So that's off the table. What is he talking about here?
I think he's saying it's going to be 120 years till he destroys the earth with the flood. Maybe.
Okay. So he gives them a time period. How long did he give, for instance, Nineveh?
40 days.
Okay. So God sends Jonah. He says, look, I'm going to destroy you guys. And in that case, it was a little over a month. In this case, things were so bad, they were so out of control. He says, I'm going to give you 120 years. How long did Noah need?
100? Was it 120?
At least 100.
100.
He had 100 to build the ark.
That's right.
Okay, look verse 32 of the last chapter. Chapter 5, verse 32. Noah was 500 years old. Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So he's 500 there. Now, look in Genesis chapter 7. And look at verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. So, in round numbers, approximately how long did he need?
100.
100 years. God says, I'm going to give you 120. You got 120 to make this boat to save these people. What did Noah spend his time doing?
Making a boat until the people get right. Get right, church, and let's go home.
He made a boat. And he preached. Tell me something. Is there a church in the United States of America that would hire you if you had the success rate of Noah? The answer to that is a big fat no. But I want to point out something that everybody misses, and that is, guys, at least he got his family on the boat. Because we got too many preachers who aren't getting their families on the boat. Right now, the current rate, and I'm going to tell you guys this several times. You'll hear it from my lips because it's very meaningful to me. Right now, it is taking 4 adult Christians to get a single faithful Christian into the next generation. That means you line up 2 sets of parents that have 4 kids in front of your church. Only one of those is going to make it as a faithful Christian according to statistics. 4 to get 1. At least Noah got his family. All right. Thoughts, comments, questions?
So just to clarify that, the 120 years, what part of that did Noah preach? All 120 years or the 100 years?
The flood came upon the earth on the 600th year.
Okay.
So the flood's happening by the 100th year.
By the 100th year, okay.
So God
Yeah,
gave
he
him
was
120
done.
God gave him 120 years, but he only needed 100.
Right. He finished the job early, which, you know, as Christians, contractors, we need to learn a little bit of lesson from that. So he's preaching to these folks. we've already talked, we talked last week about the fact that we can't be dogmatic about the whole rain thing. As a Christian, I believe probably it had not rained. You've got people who are going to be walking by, they see this massive, gargantuan boat. Obviously, they're going to be laughing at him. A lot of speculation as to whether or not Noah and his sons built it by themselves, whether he hired out help.
Right, keep going.
Well, you gotta be kidding me.
Just keep going, we'll stay.
Man! Let me at least end this point. A lot of speculation as to whether he hired out people or whether he just used his sons. We know, according to the man hours needed, they've done a feasibility study, Noah and his boys could have finished the job, meaning cut the wood, dress the wood, install the wood in 81 years. So even if he didn't hire out any of the work, even if he did it himself, they could have done the job in 81 years, leaving them plenty of time to pitch the ark within and without pitch. So do the timelines from a scientific perspective of what does it take to get the job done and a biblical perspective of what God allowed him to do they mesh? Absolutely they do. We're going to pick up here on Thursday. You guys will be listening to me via a DVD. I do hope you'll take notes because there'll be some of that on the test. It's going to be basically talking about how could the patriarchs have lived to such vast old ages, and specifically addressing some questions about the flood. Look forward to getting back with you guys. I hope y'all have a great week. If you have questions, send me an email. And for the person who talked about Satan being the leader, I'm going to do a little research. I'll get back with you on that.
Are you going to be able to answer our questions on that DVD? Why answer them quicker?
Actually, I hope so. It's me on the DVD. It's a DVD that I did a little while back, and what we will do, I told Wayne that I thought I might call in, but we decided rather than do that, what I'm going to do is let you guys get out a little early next Thursday. You can consider that time to write your paper, by the way. Okay. And then on next Tuesday, we will spend some time addressing any questions, thoughts, comments you might have. It's going to go into things like the origin of races, the Tower of Babel, and then I will pick up from there on that Tuesday, and we'll go straight from there, get into the Ice Age and into Abraham.
Quick question, Brad. When will the PowerPoint be up on your website?
It will be up on my website probably in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Cool, thanks.
Okay?